When I think of convocation, I just can't find the words to describe what we experience. How blessed we all are. All of us here at the hotel, all who are joining from around the world. And that vibration, that power, especially after Brother Chidanandaji, our revered president's 3-hour meditation yesterday morning. And just think of all that vibration and power and light that is going out into the world. What an impact it's having. And that we're all part of that. So this morning, the satsang, we always get so many very good questions. And it's impossible to answer them all. And it's always challenging to choose which ones to answer. And so we'll start with our first one. Though I have been on the path for many years, I still have bad habits. We like to choose questions that everybody can relate to. All of us. I don't feel I am changing. It's discouraging. Then I don't feel motivated to make the effort and wonder what's the point. I think most devotees, if not all devotees, at some point feel they're not making the progress that they feel they should be making. They don't feel they're changing enough. And yes, they get discouraged. But when we look at the path that we're on, what Guruji has given us, the Self-Realization Fellowship teachings didn't come from someone's thoughts or what they read or what they believe. Guruji said, in the lessons you will see the living words of God. You will see the living words of God. I only happen to be the vehicle for putting them in writing. I receive them not in a subconscious state or in a superconscious state, but in the cosmic consciousness of God. In these lessons, I give that message of His to you. God is speaking directly to us through the Guru. The power, the love, the wisdom of God is flowing through the How to Live principles. The scientific meditation techniques, they're not ordinary lessons. They're not ordinary meditation techniques. In ages past, the rishis and masters discovered the way to find God, and that is what Guruji's brought to us. He said, there is no higher, more direct way to find God than through practice of the meditation techniques of Raja Yoga taught by the Self-Realization Fellowship Gurus. So the teachings are able to awaken that divine potential, that infinite potential that's within every single one of us. Every single one of us. So why do we feel we're not progressing? Along with we have the God-realized Guru, we have the teachings He's given us, we have the scientific meditation techniques. But there's another very important element. Developing and deepening a relationship, a personal, intimate relationship with God. In Solving the Mystery of Life, Guruji says, God is the greatest lover our hearts can know. He loves to be pursued because the only thing He hopes for is the love of His children. To receive their love is the sole purpose for which He sent forth creation. He has everything within Himself except our love. He gave us free will to love Him or love Him not. He wants us very much. Think of that. He wants us very much. That is why He sends His saints to show us the way back to Him. If you think of all the universes, the galaxies, all the vastness of creation that we haven't even discovered yet, He did it all just to have that love, that exchange of divine love with us, his children. So are we developing a loving, trusting relationship with God, with Guru? So that when we're in need, and even just when we're not in need, we're turning to him, we're talking to him, we're asking for his help in order to be able to change. Now, when we think of meditation, because that is when we have that ability to shut off this very convincing, delusive world and identification with the body, and to interiorize, okay, when we meditate, how do we look at our meditations? Is it something that, well, this is something I should do or I'll feel guilty if I don't? Or something that I'm trying to fit in to an already full schedule that I have? And so it sometimes gets cut down and just a little bit. But think of it. The only thing he hopes for is the love of his children. He wants that personal, intimate relationship with each one of us. He loves us. So we want to personalize our meditations. We want to feel the one who loves me more than anyone else ever could possibly love me is waiting for me to have me all to himself or herself, to bless me and take me into his love, into his bliss. I am his child, and he wants me to reunite with him. So when we sit to meditate, we realize we're not sitting alone. Meditation, because we do it on a regular basis, it can very easily become automatic, just something we just sit down and do. We want to make it alive. We want to make that relationship with God alive, more and more alive each day. So when we sit to meditate, are we thinking about, well, will I experience anything? What am I receiving? Or is it just, I want to give? No matter whether I'm restless or not, I'm giving this meditation to you, just as an act of love. Because love is the most powerful force in the world. And Guruji can help us make those changes, get rid of those bad habits when we develop a loving relationship with him, when we trust him and openly can turn to him. So don't focus on the flaws, the habits we haven't been able to overcome yet. Those are not what we are, not what we are. And God doesn't care about them. In Solving the Mystery of Life, Guruji says, you may be the most materialistic type of person, but if you have love for God, and if you go after him persistently in daily deep meditation with all the sincerity of your heart, you will surely know him. Daily deep meditation. We think, well, but I'm not able to go into a breathless state or the super consciousness. But just that yearning, that desire, help me to interiorize. Help me to feel you. Help me to be present, fully present with you. And then during the day, meditation's only one portion of our day. The majority of the day is spent in our outer activities. There are lots of opportunities throughout the day to offer him what we do, to stop for a moment and think of him, to act in a way that attunes us with him. Because then we'll go about our day more relaxed, more receptive to his blessings, to his guidance. Then when we sit to meditate, we're calmer. It's easier to feel, you are with me. It's easier to keep the mind focused on the meditation techniques. Now, we never know where we are. Delusion will try to stop us in our tracks. And so, if we just we refuse to let negation enter in our consciousness. We refuse to give up. Refuse to give up. Persevere. We never know when that moment will come, when He helps us to the degree we move beyond those obstacles. Shortly after I entered the ashram, there was a nun who, she had been at Mother Center when Guruji was there, and she said there was a devotee in the ashram who had been there, he'd been there for years, and he struggled, and he tried, and he struggled, and he could never feel like he could get past a certain point, and he got more and more discouraged, and then finally he left the ashram. And she said, Master was very pained by it. And he said, if he had stayed another 30 days, he would have been freed of that struggle. We don't know where we are, but we can be sure when we are really close to making a breakthrough, delusion's very present also, trying to discourage us. When we deepen that relationship with the Guru, we trust him. He knows what he's doing. And to think of that, I know you know what you're doing with me. I can't see it, but I know you can. I know your only goal is to free me, to take me to God. The blessings, the tests, the trials, he knows what he's doing. Just to allow ourselves to take his hand tighter and tighter. If we remain positive in how we think and how we act, our mind power, our willpower becomes stronger. And then we begin to activate the limitless potential within us, that positive potential that's within us. There was a Greek war veteran, Stamalos, was living in the United States, and he was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And he was offered very aggressive treatment, but 9 different doctors told him that it wasn't going to make any difference and that he had about 9 months left to live. And so he thought, well, he wasn't going to bother with the treatment. He'd just save the money, and he and his wife may as well go back to his native Ikaria, a Greek island, where he could be buried in his family's graveyard overlooking the Aegean Sea. So he and his wife moved into this little house that was on the vineyard where his parents lived. And he reconnected with his faith. He started to attend his old church again. And when his friends found out that he was back home, they brought board games and books to read to him and to keep him occupied and keep him company. So he planted vegetables in the garden. He enjoyed the salt air. He spent a lot of time in the sunshine, and he relished his love for his wife. He was just so happy with their relationship. And then 9 months passed. He not only didn't die, but he felt better than ever. And so he started working in the overgrown vineyard. He wanted to start making himself useful. And he took a lot of naps. He rarely looked at a watch. He spent a lot of times outdoors. And then after 25 years, he went back to the United States to ask his doctors what had happened. And all his doctors had passed away. And he finally died in Ikaria when he was 102. Master tells us our everyday mental habits are primarily what control our lives. Habits of thought are mental magnets that draw certain things, people, and conditions to us. Look at how this man lived. Now think if it was someone else who was given the same diagnosis and he thought, well, I'm going to die, and he just stayed in bed and waited to die. The outcome could have probably been quite different. What are my predominant thoughts and actions? Are they positive or are they negative? Are they preventing me or enabling me to change? You know, it's real easy. You see a flaw in yourself and then you start fixating on it. You know, and yet all we're doing is we're reinforcing it instead of, focusing on the opposite. Never mind about that. Focus on the opposite and affirm it, visualize it, act on it. Where I am inside during the day, that's where I'm going to be when I sit down to meditate. The flaws, the struggles we have are only a very temporary phase our eternal soul is experiencing. When we focus on truth, we create an inner receptivity to God and Guru's blessings and help. Guruji said, every time a bad thought comes, cast it out. Wrap yourself in the thought of God. His holy name is the power of all powers. Like a shield, it deflects all negative vibrations. If you are influenced by a bad habit, do two things. Avoid everything that occasioned or stimulated it without concentrating on it in your zeal to avoid it. Then divert your mind to some good habit and keep it intensely engaged in cultivating that desirable trait until it becomes a part of you. From Solving the Mystery of Life, he said, start with a new understanding and a greater joy by making the effort to know him. Meditate, meditate, meditate. And then you will see that no matter what your faults are, you will find him. Now keep that in mind. We focus so much on the faults. No matter what your faults are, you will find him. For remember, he created you, and he can never forsake you. And if you call to him in the secret silence of your soul, and if you are determined that he must come to you, then he will come. That's his promise to us. He will make us realize we are one with Spirit. You asked, what's the point? That's the point. Next question. My husband feels that one of our weeks off from work next year, we should have a real vacation to travel and enjoy ourselves and completely relax. I'd rather use that precious time to meditate more on retreat. We've discussed it several times and are at an impasse. Could you please negotiate this for us? Well, it is your decision. And I think those of you who are married will agree that marriage is an incredible opportunity for spiritual growth. For give and take, for really listening, what is it that's important to my spouse? What is it that he or she needs and wants? And being able to meet that halfway. Being able to really want to do and be what is helpful to your spouse. Guruji said, two persons who unite their lives to help each other toward divine realization are founding their marriage on the right basis, unconditional friendship. True love, spiritual love, is based on unselfish mutual service and friendship. That's very beautiful to see. There's a couple that's been married 38 years. And of course, just like with any marriage, there's challenges. There's times when you don't see things in the same way. And yet they're very committed to each other, to working things out, to really sitting down and talking and listening to each other, to truly wanting to understand one another. And that, of course, deepens the bond, deepens and purifies the love. They met life as a team. Then about 12 years ago, the wife was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And gradually, the relationship shifted. The wife became less able to contribute physically, mentally, emotionally. in the needs of their life together, and eventually to the relationship itself. And the husband, he kept continuing to give more, to fill that gap, to take care of everything, to be with the wife. And recently, I spoke with him, and I mentioned it was beautiful to see how devoted he is to caring for her. You can see he really genuinely loved doing it. And when I mentioned this, his eyes and his face just lit up. And he said to me, "It's my privilege to care for her. It gives me great joy." And with just such feeling, he said, "I am so blessed because I really love her." And he was just radiating happiness as he said it. And this is a beautiful example of a spiritual marriage, of being one another's ideal helpmate, that Guruji called, a term that he used. So in this question, the husband's asking for one of our weeks off from work to have a real vacation. It's good to have time you can still have a retreat. You have time for retreat as well, but it's good to take time to do things together, to share uplifting feelings, to be out and see beautiful things in nature, beautiful places, to relax. This is balance. This is part of marriage as well. And, it's an opportunity to turn to God and ask for greater selflessness, to feel joy in doing for your spouse. It makes it positive and deepens your relationship with one another and with God. And so, since we're talking about more than 1 week, the desire of both spouses can be fulfilled. A week to have a vacation, to relax and enjoy one another's company, as well as being able to have a week to go on retreat. Guruji said, Kriya practice is enhanced by balanced living. Bear in mind that unbalanced living is incompatible with the practice of a highly advanced technique such as Kriya Yoga. The benefits of Kriya will be enhanced by the practice of even-mindedness and the avoidance of excesses. So easy in today's world. There's so many extremes. He says, and by the cultivation of those traits and the performance of those actions that are in harmony with the balanced nature of the soul. Observe moderation in everything. So it's not just work and meditate. It's also being able to enjoy wholesome things in life. When Guruji was referring to the lessons, he said, most of all, they teach how you can bring God and the all-fulfilling joyous contact with Him into all your activities. So when we're talking with God, and we're taking God with us, then we enjoy where we are and what we're doing, because we're doing it with Him, as well as with our loved one. The next question. I understand the need for solitude to find God, as Guruji always points out. But I feel having a network of good friends who support you is also essential to have a balanced life. I know the ideal is to be surrounded by spiritual friends, but this is not always possible. I have found that once you elevate your standards to Master's teachings, it is more difficult to cultivate good friendships. So I have 2 questions. 1, do you have any advice regarding how to balance seeking solitude to find God with cultivating friendships that nourish and support us so we can lead a balanced spiritual life? So I'm going to answer this question first before we go on to the second one. In Lesson 15, The Art of Balanced Living, Guruji goes into depth the various aspects of physical and spiritual life, prosperity, priorities, ideals of love and service that affect having true friendship, and so much more. And so when we look at what is a balance between the solitude and being with true friends. And this is gonna vary individual to individual based on where we are at, the level of our development, the degree of the effort we're making in meditation, the amount of self-discipline and understanding we have, the ability to concentrate, and other factors too. But you think of someone might feel they have a certain amount of solitude, and yet when they're with others, they get pulled out too much, even with really good friends. And so they feel, well, no, I need more solitude in order to be able to keep that inner balance within myself. It's going to vary. But one thing that can help us to ask ourselves, how much is God part of my daily life? Am I becoming more peaceful, happier? When I sit to meditate, am I able to still the body and quiet the mind and focus on the techniques? Am I studying the teachings and striving to apply them? Now, in your question, you say, once you elevate your standards to Master's teachings, it becomes more difficult to cultivate good friendships. And you have to define what good friendships are for you. And when you're saying, because the opposite is true. Also, the more you lower your standards, the more difficult it is to cultivate true friendships based on morals and spiritual principles that support you in trying to find God. We want to think about what we want to be supported in. Friends that help and strengthen one another, spiritual efforts. Friends that want the highest and the best for us. After we spend time with them, we feel good inside. We feel uplifted. We feel positive. Okay, those are the types of friendships that are helping to support us getting closer to God. Guruji explained the name Self-Realization Fellowship signifies friendship with God through self-realization and friendship with all truth-seeking souls. Fellowship with God through self-realization and friendship with all truth-seeking souls. Truth-seeking souls. Now, when you look at solitude, Sri Dayamata, previous president of SRF, said, I urge you again and again, develop love for God. Hunger for just one attachment to God. There is nothing more wonderful than solitude, wherein one's mind is uninterruptedly watchful of the divine beloved within. That is what Master stressed. Be alone more. Solitude is the price of God realization. She said, my spiritual duty is to encourage you to be alone more with God. Get in the habit of communing with Him. Walk out of doors more. Talk to Him. Guruji said, I want to see you with your minds always fixed in God. Okay, that's the outcome of having the proper balance. The solitude to really forge deeper and deeper that relationship with God and Guru. And then to be able to share that love, that kindness, that joy of being with others who also want to seek God. When we make Him our companion, we choose friends and everything else that we do that's in alignment with those higher vibrations. Years ago, I was speaking with Uma Mata, one of Guruji's close disciples, in a board. She was a board of directors of SRF, and I commented on how different all the board of directors were from one another, and yet the degree of respect and that pure divine friendship that they had with each other. And she said she was so sweet and so humble when she said, we would die for one another. That bond, where's that friendship? What's the foundation of that friendship? When you have God at the foundation, it doesn't matter how different we are outwardly. Look at us. all the different countries, languages, cultures, different foods, different way we dress, and yet we're Guruji's spiritual family. We're bonded in that desire for God. So the second question to this, for this individual, was, how damaging for our spiritual growth is it to relax our standards a bit and be with company that may not align completely to our spiritual ideals? For example, those who once in a while have a drink, or take sexual intimacy more lightly, or have more materially focused goals. Please especially consider the situation of devotees who don't live in the US or India, or places where SRF is strongly established. Now, we've already brought up a few points that relate to this question as well. But Guruji was very clear on this topic. In Solving the Mystery of Life, he said, remember, the company you keep determines the moods and habits you develop. Company changes your thoughts. Think of that. Company changes your thoughts. Until you are established in wisdom, you are helplessly vulnerable. You have no protection from the vibrations of wrong companions. Therefore, always choose your company wisely. It's very important to keep this in mind, because I understand this question. It's true, it comes up all the time. And yet, if you have a bare hill, there's no vegetation on it, and then it rained and rained and rained, and that hill now just became slick with mud. And someone comes up and they're standing at the top of that hill. And then they just sort of get near the edge, and then they're standing just, right at the beginning of the mud, and they slip just a little bit. But then it causes them to slip a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and they lose their balance. Before they know it, they've slipped down the hill. Relaxing our standards is a slippery slope. It's like saying, I'll only be in a little bit of delusion. We have to realize we want God. And the opposing force, you can call it Maya, Satan, delusion, is very attentive in making that not happen. And it will disguise things in a way that can sometimes even make things look spiritual. We have to be very clear about what we are willing to do, what we are willing to expose ourselves to, if we really want God. Guruji said, the vibrations of whatever good or bad environment one is in automatically impinge themselves on a mind that is passive, restless, or unmindful of those influences. And one's consciousness is uplifted or degraded accordingly. Now, I think many, if not perhaps most, devotees do not live near a temple or a meditation group or a meditation center. And yet, and they're not around other SRF devotees. And we hear this a lot from the teens and the children that are in school, and they realize they're the only one in SRF. But what they have found are others who also want to live with integrity, with being kind, with being honest, the basic spiritual principles. And so they can have those friendships. It's not necessary for it to be SRF, but those who really are sincere in wanting to improve themselves. So if we want to be truly happy in life, don't lower your standards. Once we move that bar a little, it's a lot easier to move it again. Next question. Can you please explain how one can change emotion into devotion? So first, let's look at the difference between emotion and devotion. Guruji said, devotion is not emotion. God responds to devotion, not to emotion. Emotion arouses excitement in body and mind and keeps the consciousness outward, whereas devotion interiorizes the consciousness and awakens calm, intuitive feeling through which God is perceived by the soul. You know, when we're at the mercy of emotions, we react, and probably all of us have experienced that. And so we don't think or see things clearly. We're simply responding to the emotion, whether it's worry, fear, anger, shame, guilt. We can feel that, you know, without even thinking, just reacting, somehow it's either going to make it go away or we're going to solve it. And of course it doesn't. There's a man, Arun, Mahatma Gandhi's grandson. And when he was 16 years old, they moved back to South Africa. And they were out in a village 18 miles out from the city. And one Saturday, his father had to go to a convention in town, and he didn't want to drive, and so he asked Arun to drive him. And his parents gave him a number of small errands to take care of while he was in town waiting for his father to be done. And so when Arun dropped his father off, the father said, "Pick me up at 5 o'clock and we can go home." And so then Arun said yes, and he left, and he very quickly got all the errands done. And the last errand he had to take care of was to drop off the car at the garage so it could be serviced and have the oil changed. And then he went into the nearest movie theater and started watching the films. Well, he didn't realize, because it was a double feature, he'd lost track of time. And the second movie ended at 5:30. And so he ran to the garage, got the car, and quickly went to pick up his father. And he arrived around 6 o'clock. So now his father was wondering, you know, what had happened. And he just calmly asked him, you know, "Why are you late?" And Arun was filled with guilt and just sort of the distraught emotions, you know, that he hadn't been responsible, and this is really so bad and everything. And so instead of telling him the truth, Arun said, "The car wasn't ready. I had to wait for the car." Now, not realizing his father had called the garage. And his father looked sadly at his son and said, "There's something wrong in the way I brought you up that didn't give you the confidence to tell me the truth. That made you feel you had to lie to me. I've got to find out where I went wrong with you. And to do that, I'm going to walk home." Now, Arun said there was nothing he could do to convince his father to change his mind. And he couldn't drive away and leave him there. So for the next 5.5 hours, he just crawled along in the car behind his father, watching him go through all of this pain and agony because he didn't have the ability to have command of his emotions and do the right thing and say what he had done. And so Arun said he had decided then and there that he was never going to tell an untruth again. And even 50 years later, he said whenever he thought of that event, it still gave him goosebumps. Now, when you think of it, most people in his father's position probably would have gotten angry, and the longer he waited, he probably would have gotten more angry. And then when his son doesn't tell him the truth about it, might have started yelling. And it wouldn't have been something a person would have had an impact and remembered necessarily. But it didn't create, because of where his father went, the father had complete control of himself. His emotions, his actions. He calmly walked home because he wanted to work this thing out, reflect on it. It had a lasting impact right from when it happened, all throughout Arun's life. Guruji said, mental disturbances, the negative emotions, come from a lack of control over feeling. Those unwanted emotions can be neutralized by applying the yoga science of even-mindedness and self-mastery. You know, in the 2022 annual Self-Realization magazine, there's an article by our revered president, Brother Chiranandaji, Maintaining Our Divine Connection While Living in the Material World. And he says, an emotion is simply this: currents of energy that are generated by the mind and transmitted into the body by the brain. Pranayama, as you know from practice of meditation, means control of prana, the life energy. Therefore, by pranayama, we also gain the ability to control emotions. There's a woman who, whenever she gets really, really angry, and she says she gets angry over the littlest things, it's just that she just completely loses control. She's so angry. She goes to the freezer, she takes out a big bag of ice cubes, and she starts taking the ice cubes out and just forcefully throws them in the tub, the bathtub, just to get that emotion out. And, you know, when she told me this, I thought, well, it's not a very scientific way to get control of the emotions. You know, when you look at what Guruji's given us, you know, to meet every challenge in life, and I started thinking about it with this woman, I thought, in Lesson 7, The Art of Relaxation, that was brought up in a previous class, Guruji says, whenever you suffer from anger, fear, greediness, jealousy, hate, stage fright, or any other overwhelming emotion, practice the relaxation technique. And then I thought, well, or if she had Lesson 59, control of emotions is the key to health and happiness. And in there, Guruji shows us how to use the power of consciousness to gain control over harmful emotions. Lesson 3 has some aids to calming the mind. It explains how to master the mental processes, especially the emotions. And when you think of it, it's like we have this large treasure chest, and all these gems, these spiritual gems. And as you go through them, it's like you find there's no bottom to that chest. And it's like, to what degree am I taking advantage of these? What is it that I want to change? What is one thing I would really like to change now? And let me dive into Guruji's teachings and take that technique, or what it is that he's explaining, and decide, okay, this I'm going to do until I have control of that. That's how we change. And of course, by asking him, help me to do this. Be with me. I need you to help me. I need you to bless me. Then I thought, if that woman just had this book, you know? And I mean, you probably haven't had a chance yet to read any of it. It's hard to put it down. I keep having late nights, and it's just, it's so incredible. It feels so powerful. It feels like Guruji's right there speaking to you. And he brings God to us, and all he's asking is for us to receive. Then I thought, you know, all the love, the wisdom that's in this book. Think if everyone in the world had this book and tried to apply even just one or two little things in it of that God love, that God wisdom, what our world would be like. You know, I was thinking there's just this one passage. When you think in terms of just the general population, mistakes and error are in your mind. Let your soul force drive them from your consciousness. And everywhere you will see and experience harmony. Those whose thoughts are inharmonious will always find inharmony. It is largely a perception from within more than conditions without. Cultivate harmony within yourself, and you will spread it to others. Now, of course, we see what's going on in the world and we think, well, yes, but there is a lot. But that's the accumulation, that's the outcome If we take it to our core, what starts in harmony? What creates harmony? Let me make those changes within myself that creates greater harmony for those around me and for the world at large. So now let's get into meditation posture. We're going to practice an affirmation together. But beforehand, every time you're going to meditate, even if it's very briefly, get in the habit of just doing a mental check that your spine is erect, shoulders back, chest out, stomach in. The more we sit up straight during the day, the more those muscles along the spine become stronger. It doesn't take effort to sit up straight. And then do a mental check. Am I relaxed? To interiorize, we need to really be relaxed. No tension in the muscles. No tension in the mind. Then lift the gaze to the spiritual eye. Forget everything else. Allow yourself to become absorbed in the affirmation. Before we have the affirmation, I just want to read this quote from Guruji. The joy that you find in devotion is the responding presence of God. And if you continually fan the flickers of that desire for Him, until it becomes ever-burning devotion, He will come. Never get discouraged, for He will come. So when you practice an affirmation, that is a thought of truth. You want to practice it with conviction, with faith, just allowing it to fill you. So we're going to start out loud, let it get more soft, and then gradually just have it be mentally repeating it, taking it deeper and deeper into our meditation. So please repeat after me. I come from God. I am life eternal. I live, move, and have my being in that power evermore. I come from God. I am life eternal. I live, move, and have my being in that power evermore. I come from God. I am life eternal. I live, move, and have my being in that power evermore. I come from God. I am life eternal. I live, move, and have my being in that power evermore. I come from God. I am life eternal. I live, move, and have my being in that power evermore. I come from God. I am life eternal. I live, move, and have my being in that power evermore. I come from God. I am life eternal. I live, move, and have my being in that power evermore. I come from God. I am life eternal. I live, move, and have my being in that power evermore. I come from God. I am life eternal. I live, move, and have my being in that power evermore. Om. Peace. Amen. I think we all feel that at Convocation, the love, the peace, the joy, the light that God and Guru and the Great Ones are pouring upon us. And we can take that deeper and deeper within ourselves as a reminder, you love me, you want me, I belong to you. You know, to really affirm that truth. Let it be a guiding force in what you do during the day, to know you are with me. You are guiding me. You are helping me, protecting me. Because He is. And this is just one of those very tangible reminders when we have something on this scale. How blessed we are. Jai Guru.